Welcome to Gotham City as you've never seen it. A Gotham that whispers the same name from the shadows, but a much different person responds. In my last video about the Bat, we talked about Winston Duke throwing his hat into the ring to play the iconic Caped Crusaders. Today, we're going to explore a Batman born into the heart of the civil rights movement, a dark knight who fought not just muggers and madmen, but the systemic racism and evil that plagued his city. And no, I'm not calling for a rebooted origin or an alternate universe. Right now, I want us to reimagine the OG Batman, the one and only. There's just more than a vigilante, a symbol of hope, a beacon in the darkest of nights. What if this Batman was black? So come on, my little nieces and nephews, join me as we explore this uncharted territory. Because in the end, it's not about the color of the man in the cowl, it's about him having the courage to wear it. And now I want to take this little thought experiment just a little further. What if the original Batman was black? Now, the character of Batman has been around for over 80 years and has been portrayed by many actors of different races, live action, animation, you name it. However, the question remains, what if the original Batman was black? How would it change the character and the story? Now, I want to explore the possibilities and examine the impact it would have on the character and the comics industry as a whole. I am going to issue a disclaimer. I'm not trying to insinuate that there needs to be any changes to the Batman character in order for a black actor to play him. But what I would like us to consider is if the original Batman was already conceived as a black character. First of all, I am well aware that black versions of the character do exist, such as Tim Fox or the Wayne Williams version from Stan Lee's Just Imagine world from the early aughts. I appreciate the comics, and Stan did the most. He did his big one by taking Wayne through an origin, but he mostly changed his history. I want all other things the same. He's rich, intelligent, handsome, and in this case, blackity black. So what I'm exploring is the original Batman, but placed smack dab in the middle of the civil rights era. Now, this period would have been the earliest time in American history that someone would even think about making a black comic book hero. Think Black Panther in 1966. And we all know the Batman origin story. It was a dark and stormy night. Thomas and Martha Wayne, along with their young son Bruce, were walking home from a movie theater in Crime Alley. We probably should stay out of places called Crime Alley. But anywho, as they walked through the alley, a mugger approached them and demanded their money and jewelry. When Thomas refused to hand over his wallet, the mugger shot him and Martha, leaving young Bruce an orphan. The traumatic event of losing his parents in such a violent way right in front of him, and the inability of the justice system to bring the killer to justice, is what motivates Bruce Wayne to become Batman and dedicate his life to fighting crime in Gotham City. The origin story has been a staple of the Batman comics since his creation in 1939 and has been retold and reinterpreted in many different versions of the character, including comics, movies, TV shows, video games, yada yada yada. Now, while some variations do exist in most versions, the death of Bruce Wayne's parents is the pivotal moment that shapes his identity as the Batman. And then it also fuels his desire to rid the city of crime and corruption. Now, if Batman were black, would the robbers have killed his parents? Or would someone who thought they were uppity Negroes have taken them out first? An important part of the Batman origin story is the death of his parents. Thomas and Martha must die. We know it went down in an alley as the family left the theater. But if Batman were black, would it have happened that way? Possibly. But there's also the possibility that his parents' deaths would have been racially motivated. If Bruce Wayne lost his parents because of a hate crime, how would that inform his movements from then on? It may have started his process of becoming the Bat a whole hell of a lot sooner, living with the knowledge that their death was not some random act but was targeted, might make Bruce take a never me attitude. This would encourage him to get bigger, stronger, and faster at an earlier age. And while still looking out for the everyman, would Batman's primary focus be on prominent racists and or the institutions that perpetuate racism? After gaining the skills necessary to become Batman, would our Bruce take to the streets battling the criminal element of his Gotham? Potentially, yes. He would want his neighbors to be safe from any type of violence or wrongdoing, whether the criminals were black or white or something in between. He would keep the city safe. But he'd probably want to take down the higher institutions and systems that contribute to the kind of racism that killed his parents. This would include common criminals, vicious organized groups, and the corrupt officials who turn a blind eye to the injustice occurring right in plain sight. And also, his rogues gallery would probably look a lot different as well. The Joker and the Riddler might have shown up in later issues, but I'm sure his first encounters with rogues would have been a lot less fun. Depending on the city, would the law's goal be to bring Batman in alive to face justice for his vigilantism, or would he have a target on his back? Even with the Batman we all have come to know and love, city police have a love-hate relationship with him. Many respect his intentions and are happy to have a character like him around to work outside of the law to get results. They also know he's on their side and he'll make their jobs a little easier, so they give him a little leeway. On the other hand, other cops feel as if Batman and his exploits only shine a spotlight on their failures. And I like to think those officers would wear it as a badge of honor to unmask the Caped Crusader. With a black Batman, I think the dynamic would be pretty much the same. There would be those officers who appreciate the assist while others play defense, and an even smaller group of law enforcement officials, the ones on the take by criminals, gangs, or their own racist mindsets, would probably love nothing more than to eliminate the Bat hanging his cowl on their mantle. A black Batman in that era would likely be seen as just another criminal. Despite his efforts to rid the city of crime, many everyday citizens would be more afraid of him than the villains he protects them from. The very people he chooses to protect would also be threats to his life. And then I wonder if Batman would still have the cooperation of Commissioner Gordon. And there are two ways to look at this. Number one, Commissioner Gordon is a good old boy who rose through the ranks because of his connections with racists and is therefore in their debt. Or, number two, Commissioner Gordon rose through the ranks because he is an agent for change in Gotham, and the majority of officers and constituents are ready for that kind of transformation to take place. It's not hard to see which possibility would be in the best interest of our black Batman, and it would change the amount of caution he needs to take moving around the city if Commissioner Gordon was on his side. Then I ask myself, and I know I ask myself a whole lot of questions, so I'm still asking myself, What would his involvement have been in the civil rights movement? This Batman is motivated by social justice, so the civil rights movement would have been right up his alley. No, not a crime alley, his regular alley. He would most definitely have been a symbol of protection to the followers of the civil rights movement. Depending on how old Bruce is at the height of the era, he might be just starting out or even nearing the end of his Batman journey. So I'll just Robert Pattinson this thing and make him second year Batman who's still working out the kinks to his persona. Batman would likely be heavily influenced by and align himself with the leaders of the movements for social change, with him also picking off the individuals opposing the movement who would put up the most resistance. Things might even work out more peacefully. Now, this universe's Bruce Wayne would probably struggle with choosing a philosophy when the leaders of the movements are Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Bruce would probably have met first with King's camp, which would throw his conscience into a state of flux. Martin Luther King's whole thing was nonviolence, but sometimes violence was necessary when dealing with a criminal element. I'd like to think Martin Luther King would be the reason Bruce draws the line for Batman's no-kill rule, and he would never use more violence than is necessary to protect himself or others and to subdue the suspect. Malcolm X's philosophy would only serve to reinforce the decisions he made after talking to Martin Luther King. There are times that some use of violence would be necessary, but he would never, ever, ever allow himself to intentionally kill anyone. One thing about being around in that era as a hero is that many people would want to know your philosophy, where you stood on the topic of civil rights. Batman could just avoid answering questions and talking, but his actions would speak volumes. If he went on record with his allegiance to any particular leader, criminals might find a way to exploit his principles. I still think his methods would be the same, though. There would be a clear-cut example of him being heavily influenced by the leaders of that day. And I also think at some of the major moments of Martin Luther King's life, Bruce Wayne would have wanted to be there. That wouldn't have stopped events from going down on April 4th, 1968, and Bruce would certainly have been affected. So again, you have a person that he looks up to being gunned down or in a violent manner, and I'm wondering how that would have affected a black Batman in that era. And speaking of the comic books, you have to wonder, what would the public perception have been if Batman was black when he was introduced? The comic book fans would fall into two categories. They'll either love it or they'll hate it, and it probably would be no middle ground. Many people might have had a positive reaction to a black Batman. The civil rights movement was a time of great social change, and many people were questioning the status quo and demanding more representation and equality for marginalized groups, especially black people. A black Batman could have been seen as a powerful symbol of black excellence and an embodiment of the ideals of strength, courage, and justice that the civil rights movement was fighting for. On the other hand, it's also more than possible that some people would have had a negative reaction to Black Batman. The civil rights movement faced significant opposition, and many people were resistant to change. A Black Batman could have been seen as a threat to the status quo and would have faced major backlash from those who opposed the civil rights movement. The idea of a Black Batman 80 years ago would have opened an era of new opportunities and representations, but most of his potential audience was probably not ready for that. And quietly, they probably are still not ready for that. But anywho, Batman is currently one of the most popular and most identifiable comic book characters in the world. I'm not sure that would be the case if he had started out as a black man. Because no matter how good the stories are, someone would feel indicted by seeing their own despicable qualities mirrored in a comic book, a TV show, or a movie. We're seeing that now in present society. If left to people like this, a black Batman would have just been a footnote in comic book history if he existed at all. There would have needed to have been a perfect storm of comic book publishers and creators to even get the story off the ground, not to mention the comic book shop owners putting their own livelihood on the line to sell the books. It would be dangerous to even sell these books in that era. It would have taken a lot of heroes to make a black Batman possible at that time. In conclusion, a black Batman during the civil rights era would have faced a multitude of challenges and opened up new possibilities for representation in comic books. The character's origin story, motivations, and interactions with both criminals and law enforcement would have been significantly influenced by the social and political climate of the time. While a black Batman could have served as a powerful symbol of black excellence and justice, he would have also faced opposition and backlash from those resistant to change. Ultimately, the success and impact of a black Batman in that era would have depended on a combination of factors, including the support of comic book creators, publishers, shop owners, as well as the willingness of the audience to embrace a hero who challenged the status quo. At the end of a very long day, the idea of a black Batman might seem like a bat out of hell to some people, but let's be honest. The world could use a hero who challenges our preconceived notions and reminds us that under the cowl, we're all just human. Batman is defined by his resilience, his intelligence, his unwavering sense of justice, not by the color of his skin. And just like Bruce Wayne himself, it's time for the creators and custodians of his legacy to embrace a little bit of risk and a whole lot of courage. It's sad to think that in 2024, we're still debating whether a black man can wear a cape and a cowl. But perhaps, just like in the 1940s, it'll take a bold leap of faith from creators, studios, and fans alike to prove that Batman can be anyone, regardless of race. So, let's be the change we want to see in Gotham. Let's embrace the idea that a black Batman isn't just possible, it's powerful. Let's show the world that the true measure of a hero lies not in their appearance, but in the depths of their character. After all, Batman is known to say it's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. And that, my friends, is a truth that transcends race, time, and yes, even the darkest of nights. So, with all that being said, I don't have a lot left on this subject. I hope that you will send out your comments and let me know exactly how you feel about the subject of a black Batman and my imaginary what if version of what if the OG Batman were black. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and you turn your notifications on because I put videos out regularly. Regularly with the videos, regularly with the live streams. And I hope that you will come back and hang out with me again. And on that note, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.